Hi there, cross stitchers. Welcome back to Mother Buck's Cross Stitch. I'm Terry, and I'm focusing this year on the L&L Designs 2025 SAL. I'll also be touching on my WIPGO projects, and so let's get started. So today I'm going to start out by talking about the perils of stitching when you're tired. I was going great guns. It's been about a week since I started, and I had about 2,200 stitches in when I realized my count was off by 2. Somewhere I was off by 2. Now I had started stitching in a block, in a 40 by 40 block, because I liked seeing all of the colors come together. And that's not the way I normally stitch. I normally stitch one color, just kind of stretch it out as far as it'll go, then come back and start another color, fill in as I go. But I decided this time I would try doing it in a block so I could see the wonderful colors coming together. Once again, I'm working on Jelly World by L&L Designs. And all of a sudden, after about 2,200 stitches, I realized I'm a couple of stitches off somewhere. Now I have a couple of days a week when I have other obligations, and normally I don't stitch on those days because they're all days obligations, and by the time I get home, I'm really too tired to do it. But because I was so excited about starting this SAL, I went ahead on one of those days and started stitching. After I got to that 2,200 mark and realized something was wrong, I thought, okay, I'll go back and frog it out. As I went back one line, I went back another line, I went back another line. Finally, found the mistake when I was when I would have had only about 250 stitches left. So obviously I made it on that day when I had an all-day obligation and stitched when I was tired. Needless to say, I was pretty upset. And I think everybody hates frogging. And usually I only have a small bit to do, but this was, 3/4 or more of the piece that I had already done. So it was a question of whether do I go back and just go to that point and fix it? Do I ignore it? I was afraid to ignore it because I was afraid it was just going to multiply the problem as I continued on. And I'd have to keep remembering it as well, which is not something I might do. So I bit the bullet, frogged the whole thing. It took me 3 hours to get rid of all those stitches. 3 hours of time when I really wanted to be stitching instead. But I did it. Now I'm starting with a blank sheet and the frog is gone. So I decided I better start the way I normally stitch, which is taking one color, following it through as far as I can, and then coming back later and filling in the spaces. So this is where I am now. Now you saw a picture of where I was last time, and it looked nothing like this. I just had a small square right here, and I only had a few hundred stitches in then as well. But anyway, this is the way I normally stitch, and I'll come across to the other end of the page with this color, which is 939. It's sort of a really, really dark navy. And I am doing tent stitch, which I am enjoying. But what I found when I was doing that block was that I end up having a real difficult time on tent stitch figuring exactly where I am. Now, I know that sounds funny because it's the same block, it's the same measurement of thread, but the fact that I have one cross, in my mind, you should be able to just pick up. But when I start to actually do it, I find that there's a problem figuring out exactly where am I stitching. And I thought, this must be something weird with me. But then on the Facebook group, I started reading people having the same issue that hadn't done tent stitch before. And that is that they were having problems figuring exactly where to put the in-between stitches, the stitches that they came back and filled in. That they were having problems actually visualizing where they were. So I don't feel so bad about that now. But it gave me an idea that I know when I come back to this now, I'm going to have to, when I start to fill in, I'm going to have to be ultra vigilant about what I'm doing so that I know exactly where I am. And I'm hoping that with practice and doing it over and over, that it'll become easier for me to figure out exactly where I am. When it's one color like this, easy peasy, goes really fast. When it's multiple colors and I'm filling in the blanks, then that's where the counting problems come in. But we'll keep going and see how this goes. I am really enjoying it. I'm also loving seeing what everybody's doing on Facebook. It is just amazing to me what some of you can actually do. It's so thrilling to see how much you've done. And I know for some people that is really almost depressing because it's like, gosh, how can they stitch that fast? How can they get that much done? But you got to remember, even though they're inherently, SALs are kind of pushing you to go fast. It's not a race. We've got an entire year to work on this. And if you don't finish it in a year, who really minds? I mean, except yourself. It doesn't bother anybody else. And if I don't finish this in a year's time, I won't be disappointed at all. I know I'm going to have a huge chunk of it done, and it's going to be something that I'm going to continue to do until it's finished because it's really, really beautiful chart, and I'm anxious to have it in my house. So just remember, although it's wonderful to see how fast people go, I mean, I've seen people that have put 15,000 stitches on already in a matter of a week, which just absolutely blows my mind. But it's not a race. It's for the enjoyment of the hobby. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so we've talked about the SAL. Now, the other thing I'll talk about is my WIPGO board. This is my WIPGO board. Now, I made sure, I think I mentioned before, that I am setting really small goals for myself. Small in my mind of what I have seen on other things. Maybe I should put it that way. They're not truly small in my mind, but they're small compared to other WIPGO boards. But that's okay. This is to make it so that I can touch some of my other projects while I'm working on this great big project, while I'm working on the full coverage SAL. On January's call was 11 and 20. And for my 11 and 20, 11, I have an hour and a half, or an hour of backstitching. And I have several projects that need some backstitching done and that I haven't done as I went along, which I normally do. So that's going to be great for me because it's going to help me finish those projects. 20 is my Monopoly board. I've shown that to you before. Monopoly board, I had that I was going to do 200 stitches. It's not a lot, but it's going to help me complete that board. I have, as you can see, I've shaded in my 20 because I have finished my Monopoly board part. I'll show you my Monopoly board now. Like I said, I've shown this before in my whips, and I've had this going for so many years, it's crazy. But this is my Monopoly board. And the part that I was working on, turn this around this way. The part that I was working on was the Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky Avenue, filling in the red at the top. This is what I was using for my 200 stitches. And I actually did 265 stitches. So I'm perfectly happy with that. It's a piece that I might not have touched this piece at all if not for my WIPGO board. So I'm really glad to have that part done. And it's on my board a couple of more times, so I'll have some more of it done this year. And if things start to slow down as far as my SAL is concerned, then I will even get more of it done. But anyway, that's one of my blocks finished. The first thing that I'm going to work on for backstitching is my mason jar lineup. And this is by dimensions. And you can see I've done the backstitching as I went along, and you can see it makes a big difference. I mean, it just makes the whole thing come alive. That's the thing I love about backstitch. And I got to this point when I moved my Q-snap and just started stitching. I am done with the stitching now. It needs to be backstitched so I can complete this piece and start another one. So I have an hour of backstitching, and I will start backstitching on this for my number 11. And when I have my hour in, I'll have the 2 for January all set, and I'll be ready for February. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that I could meet my monthly goal and still be able to move on the next month and not worry about having those still hanging there that I need to work on, because my mind is going to be set on that Heaven and Earth Design SAL. So let me know how far you've got along. Let me know how you're enjoying the SAL. Share with me about your whip board, how you're doing on your whip board. What kind of goals did you set yourself for your whip board? Most of mine are a certain number of stitches or a certain time period. I have all of my whips listed in there that are active right now. I have some that are in timeout, but all of them that are active right now are on there, as well as time for backstitching. And I have a couple of squares that I made dealer's choice. In other words, I pick whatever I think I feel like working on that day, that month. Anyway, that's it for today. I'll be back next week. Like I said, be sure and let me know how you're going. If you have the same kind of problems with tin stitching that I'm having, let me know. I mean, it's a community. We all have the same problems, and we can see how we're all adjusting to them. Maybe you've got a fix for the counting problem I'm having that I haven't found out. Whatever it is, let me know, and I'll see you again next week. Until then, happy stitching.